Welcome, everybody, to this, our second day of daily Bible reading. We are in Matthew 2 today, and we are going to get through the New Testament in a year. Now, this is not a big undertaking, but it is something that you're going to have to read. Then I'm going to give you some things that you might have missed in the text in 5 to 7 minutes every day. 3 to 5 different things that you might not have seen. And boy, in Matthew 2, I have one word on my mind, and I bet it's the word in your mind. It's prophecy. It is literally all over this chapter. Did you do your daily Bible reading yet? If so, I want you to comment on what we're talking about. If not, maybe you want to read as you're listening along. But we need to go ahead and get the screen up so that we can start talking about these chapters, because again, there's so much prophecy to talk about in these verses. So let me get this up on the screen. Here we are, Matthew chapter 2. And right out of the box, what do we have? We're told that Jesus was born in Bethlehem in the days of Herod the king, and the Magi from the east arrived in Jerusalem, saying, "Where is he who was born King of the Jews? For we saw his star in the east and have come to worship him." Now, the Magi these wise men seem to spend a little bit of time with Herod. We're going to be talking about that in just a second. I want you to see we've already deep in the weeds of prophecy here, because they're referencing a star. That's likely a reference to Numbers 24 and 17 about the star that we're hearing him called the King of the Jews. And I'll put all this in the notes. Jeremiah 23 and 5, Jeremiah 30 and 9, Zechariah 9 and 9. We've already been told he's born in Bethlehem. Micah chapter 5. Now, these are not 3 of your 5 things. I'm counting these as 1, because that would be shortchanging you. But there's a lot of prophecy right here in these early verses of Matthew chapter 2. But looking a little further here, we're told that Herod the king heard this. He was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. Now, this is a new insight. This is the second thing I want you to see. This is a brand new insight. I have not caught this before until doing the daily Bible reading, that I always thought it was Herod that was troubled, but I've always missed that statement that it was also all those in Jerusalem with him. He is talking about his inner court. He's likely talking about the power structure in Jerusalem. Maybe he's talking about the Pharisees, the Sadducees, the scribes, because that's who he calls, right? He's going to call the scribes to him and the chief priest to inquire about the Messiah and when he was to be born. So this isn't just one man's discontent with this or worry about this. There's some worry that's moving through the upper Jewish echelon. And that sort of makes me think about Isaiah 53, that the groundwork for Jesus being rejected is being laid right here. So he gathers them together and he inquires about when the Messiah was going to be born. That's also a reference, another prophetic reference going back to Daniel 7, the Son of Man, that anointed one by God. And they told him that was going to be in Bethlehem, again, Micah 5. And then you have the Micah 5 prophecy right here on display, Micah 5 and 2, verse 6. "And you, Bethlehem, land of Judah, are by no means least among the leaders of Judah, for out of you shall come forth a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel." So we're getting, again, just a ton of Old Testament prophecy that's being rolled together here. Now, the third thing that I noticed that sort of deals with maybe some cultural misconceptions about the birth of Jesus is that at this time, Jesus is not a small child. The first hint of that comes in verse 7 when it says that Herod secretly called the Magi. He'd apparently asked them to stay a little while and determined from them the exact time the star appeared. And so he doesn't know about this. He doesn't know about this prophecy. He doesn't know when the star appeared. We're going to see a little while later that he makes his decision about taking some action of killing children. More about that in a second. Based on that information they gave him, they choose a number of 2 years old. But not only that, when we go down just another verse, it says, "And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, go and search carefully for this child." That's not the word for infant here. This is the term for young child. So the whole nativity manger scene with the wise men visiting, that's not really biblically the way it happened. And so Herod deceives the wise man. The wise man says he wants to come and worship them. But it's interesting to me that the wise men are coming here, because this is also, as we talked about last week, some fulfillment of some things from Isaiah. But that's not one of your tips for today. But next, moving on, what we're going to see is there's a whole lot more prophecy, because the wise men are warned by God not to return to Herod, and so they left the country going another way. And then Joseph is warned before Herod can become angry, knowing that he's been deceived. Joseph is warned to get the family out of the region of Bethlehem. And in fact, he takes them to Egypt, and we see that's a reference to Hosea 11 and 1. It says, "When Israel was a youth, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son." And not only is it a reference to Hosea 11 and 1, it might be a reference to Numbers 24 and 8, where the prophet Balaam couldn't help but bless the people of God. There's a reference to God bringing him out of Egypt, this deliverer of Israel. So there may be something to that as well. But one of the things that I'm beginning to see, and you're really going to see it with this next point, as Herod starts his campaign against the children, is we have another prophecy fulfilled in verse 18 from Jeremiah 31:5 that talks about Rachel weeping because her children were no more. And Matthew's using that as a reference to prophecy. There is a lot of interplay between Jesus and Moses here, and a little bit of potential fulfillment of the Deuteronomy prophecy in 18 verses 15 and 16, where Moses said a prophet like him God would raise up. I want you to think about sort of the parallels here. What was Herod doing to respond to the birth of Jesus, to try to keep Jesus from coming to power? Murdering children, right? What was being done in Egypt when Moses was born, right? That Pharaoh's killing children to keep the Jews from taking over the nation, or that's what he thought they would do. Now, not only that, but you have Moses leaving Egypt as a young man. You have Jesus going to Egypt as a young child. There's a whole lot of foreshadowing in the story of Moses about what Jesus is going to do. And so we also have the return of Jesus from Egypt that Joseph is told in a dream when Herod dies. Not only that, but we have Matthew sort of confirming some prophecy about his return from Egypt and where they would live that we don't even know. It was something the Jews knew, but it's not recorded in our Bible, other than maybe it's one of the things that showed that Jesus was despised. But here at the end of the chapter, God tells Joseph in a dream, and Joseph leaves for Galilee, and we see that Matthew is saying this is a fulfillment of something that they would have known, that Jesus was going to be called a Nazarene, and he just says that was spoken of through the prophets. It's not a prophecy that we have, but it's one that they seemingly would have recognized. So there you go, 3 to 5 things about Jesus in about 5 minutes. What did you write down, and what did you make note of? I'll tell you, for me, that was the interplay between Moses and Jesus that seemed really, really consequential in this. Of course, the fulfillment of prophecy, but just sort of that interplay of Matthew really is driving home here, or seems to be, that Jesus was going to be the fulfillment that Moses was the shadow of. In fact, I made some notes to that in my electronic Bible. And hey, if you're marking in your Bible and you want to get some of these the journaling Bibles that I mentioned in the last video, I've got the Amazon affiliate links in there, along with some commentaries and some other materials you might want to take a look at. So I'll be back tomorrow with Matthew chapter 3, but I want to see what you liked about this Bible reading today. And until I see you again, have a good day and God bless.